This is a trigger warning. The stories in Greek mythology often have violent and unsavory story beats that involve betrayal, murder, and sexual assault. Some of these tones can be upsetting or triggering to listeners. Welcome to the Myths That Made Us. I'm your host, Kyle Leonard. Each week, I'm happy and excited to bring you a new story in folklore or mythology. These stories can be tragic, loving, even horrific. I'm excited to have you along for the ride as we take a trip through the myths that made us. Today, our first episode dives into the deep and intricate world of Greek mythology. The timelines for this mythology are tough to nail down in a definitive way, but I'm going to be doing my best to keep it as linear as I possibly can, each and every time I come back to Greek mythology. For now, we'll keep it simple and start where all good stories do, the beginning. Much like everything, the world began in darkness, shrouded in sightless chaos, dense despair. It seemed as if nothing would bring an end to this hopeless suffering. The story is well known. A son is born to a father, and a prophecy declares that the son will overthrow that father. In fear, that father takes measures to avoid that very fate. But we'll learn throughout this show that fate is rarely outsmarted. Uranus was born of the sky and Gaia, emerging from the thick dark chaos that was the world. Along with Uranus, Gaia, the personification of the earth, came Pontus and Urea, who would become known as the sea and the mountains, as well as Tartarus, deep within Gaia. As we learn many times throughout these stories, relationships and the consummation that brings forth a child is rarely consensual. And so, each night, Uranus would wash over Gaia in a sexual embrace, forcing himself upon her. But from this union, many children were born, including the Titans, the Cyclopes, and the Hecatoncres, giant mountain-sized creatures with 100 arms and 50 heads resting upon their shoulders. Uranus was known to favor his older children, the Titans, while despising his younger children, the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncres, even going as far as to imprison them deep within Gaia, inside of Tartarus. This, of course, would bring a great amount of pain to Gaia, giving her the idea to enact a plan to end her grief. Of course, this plan would involve her older children, the Titans. She begged and pleaded with them to turn on their father. However, none of these children were so bold enough, none but one, the youngest of the bunch, Kronos, who possessed the most ambition of them all, agreed to the task. Gaia, forging a deadly sickle from adamant, she entrusted Kronos with this punishment. So, when as per usual, Uranus came to Gaia expecting more sexual exploits, he instead found himself castrated once exposed. With a mighty swing, Kronos sliced away the god's manhood, casting it hard and far into the ocean. Cursing his sons for this deed, Uranus swore that vengeance for this deed would come. Because of these actions, Kronos was able to usurp power from Uranus and claim his title as the supreme commander of the cosmos. However, from the fertile blood of Uranus, now spilled upon the ground, life had flourished. The droplets of blood produced new life in the form of giants, furies, and the tree nymphs. But this would not be the only life born from the mutilated Uranus. As his testicles bobbed in the sea, they began to bubble and froth, bringing forth what looked like a being. And as so, Aphrodite came to be. One of his first acts as Titan on top was to re-imprison the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncres, once again bringing Gaia a feeling of rage and distrust. Now reconciled, Uranus and Gaia warned Kronos of the prophecy regarding the cycle of the son supplanting the father. It was still alive, and he too would fall victim to its reach, once again planting that seed of fear and greed deep into the mind and heart of the current king Kronos. And because of this, of course, Kronos was filled with immense fear of being overthrown. So much so that he would take considerable measures to avoid it. What measures, you may ask? Are those measures not having kids? Well, I assure you not. Asking an all-powerful being not to reproduce is simply impossible. It's not going to happen. Kronos instead hatched a plan to consume each of his children as infants. Rhea, the wife of Kronos, was understandably upset when she brought her firstborn child, Hestia, to meet her father, and Kronos swallowed her whole. What mother wouldn't be upset? Even though she was distraught and saddened, she would continue to bring her children to Kronos for consumption. She would watch in horror each time as he consumed Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. With each one, her guilt and rage deepened until it had reached its boiling point. Rhea began to hatch a plan that would save her sixth child from the same horrible fate. She would flee the island of Crete, escape Kronos and his lust for power and his fear of losing it. She would give birth to her child in secret and use a clever tactic to keep her baby boy alive. The baby she proudly named Zeus. Next time, we'll explore what happens when a scorned mother has had enough and a son raised in secret takes back control from a power-hungry father. All this and more when we go over the Titanomachy. We get the feeling that fathers in Greek mythology may not be the best role models for their sons. A Greek mythology parenting tip of the day would probably have to be, don't eat your children, and if you are scared of them growing up and overthrowing you, maybe have a conversation with them. I thank you for listening. Please join me next week when we go over the next installment, the Titanomachy, the famous war between the Olympians and the Titans. You're not going to want to miss out.